Bathroom. What? I'm not gonna go to the bathroom.
The concept of music allows me to go out in the world and play.
When I was 16 years old and I looked at the mirror, I said, I love people, policy, and politics.
His parting words were that I would either go to prison or become a millionaire.
Be students, be teachers, be politicians, be preachers. Be believers, be leaders, be astronauts, be champions. Standing in the Hall of Fame. And the world's gonna know your name.
Tell me about your philanthropy, Matt. Why water?
Every 20 seconds, a child dies because they lack access to clean water and sanitation. Every 20 seconds. It's just absolutely staggering.
Where would you like your mayor's fund? What vision do you have?
Our target, our ambition, is to stamp out the literacy of 11-year-olds.
Foundation focuses particularly on women's financial independence. And I wanted to help women so that they could make choices.
1 in 6 Americans are now actually going to bed hungry.
Other projects for the AIDS Foundation was Project PEP as well. Tell me about that.
Well, Project PEP came up because there's a drug called post-exposure prophylaxis that if you take within 72 hours of being exposed to HIV, you pretty much won't get it.
My last book was about the horrible abuse of women and girls around the world. And I think it's the worst unaddressed issue that the world faces today.
Yeah, unfortunately, poaching has been increasingly becoming a problem. A kilo of ivory now costs more than a kilo of gold.
You can be a hero, you can get the gold. Breaking all the records they thought would never be broke. Yeah, do it for your people, do it for your pride. You're never gonna know if you never even try. Do it for your country, do it for your name. Cause there's gonna be a day when you're standing in the Hall of Fame.
Little generosity is good for one's soul.
I don't want to die, and my headstone just says, here lies a successful businessman, a billionaire. That would be empty. So I need something more than that. I need to be able to say and feel that I've made a real difference in the world.
I've always felt this great opportunity to use my celebrity in much bigger and better ways. What I do as my job isn't who I am, it's just what I do.
To see a child be the first person in their family to ever graduate high school, let alone go to college, is pretty rewarding.
Thank you, Mr. Abernathy.
These are my roots. I'm proud to be from here.
Have you never done this before?
No, no. And I've never allowed anyone to see you got good. I think it's so exciting that women of today can really do it all. People always used to say, you can't have it all, but I think you can. I think you can be a mother, you can work, you can travel, you can do almost anything you want, and I think that the opportunities are quite open.
Quite a journey, sir.
Yeah, it's been a long trip, but I hope it's not over. I've had a good time. I hope it's not over.
Make sure we're on here. So you can see she is a force of nature with a hell of a Rolodex, I might add. I want to thank you all again for being here. I especially want to thank Credit Suisse for their support. And then I want to acknowledge Pamela Thomas-Graham. You know, I talked about CNBC 25 years ago, but when CNBC was a mere adolescent at maybe the age of 13 or 14 or 15, Pamela Thomas-Graham was the CEO of CNBC, and I want to thank her for her contributions then and now, and for passing me the baton 10 years ago. So Pamela, thank you. I also want to introduce everyone to Casey Sullivan. Maybe I should call you KCS, because we used to call you PTG. So Casey Sullivan, who runs CNBC International, and so I hope everyone gets a chance to say hi to Casey as well. We produce Tanya show out of our London studios. So, folks, the host and the executive producer of CNBC Meets, Tanya Breyer.
Mark Hoffman, thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you all so much for coming tonight. It means so much to me that you're all here, and especially to our partners, Credit Suisse, Pamela Thomas Graham and your team. And of course, Mark, thank you for allowing me the platform to show these global figures, what they do, why they do it, and more importantly, how they make a difference to so many lives around the world. You've just seen a snippet of what they do, but really on the ground they make so much difference to so many people's lives, and that's the ethos of the program. A couple of years ago I sat down and I wrote this program. Sol Kerzner, you won't know this, but you were actually on that sheet of paper. You haven't become one of my victims yet, but I hope you will be a future victim. And Sol, of course, you, Tamara Mellon, OBE, you were my first victim. You were the first ever Meet subject. And I feel so grateful for that, Tamara. We saw you there in the real. And all these people represent everything that is good about what we need to do in the world. And Mark, you've given me that platform to show it. Pamela, you're partnering with us to show how we can improve lives. And my next victim is actually here, ladies and gentlemen, who will join that incredible alumni. It gives me great pleasure to introduce to you a young lady who already, at just 30 years old, has made a difference to 86 million lives around the world. Please welcome Lauren Bush Lauren.
Pressure's on. Thank you.
Lauren, welcome, and thank you so much for being with us here this evening. Now, what's so interesting about you is that you started your business in 2007, Feed Projects, but at the heart of the business, Lauren, you were absolutely convinced that you had to give back. It was going to be a business with a difference. Tell us about it.
So yeah, my start to the journey to starting Feed began over 10 years ago. I was a sophomore in college, and I really had this amazing, life-changing opportunity to travel with the UN World Food Program. Many of those pictures are from various trips. You'll see, I think, flashing behind me as I talk. But it really opened my eyes to the realities of poverty and hunger that, unfortunately, 842 million people around the world face every day. And I, again, being a young person, would go on these trips and sort of learn and talk to families and communities and children, you know, just because of where they're born, are born into a life, again, not knowing where their next meal is coming from. So I knew I wanted to do something, and I actually felt for many years this frustration, because I would go and I would learn, and I would, you know, again, meet these amazing people, and also programs on the ground that were truly making a difference and really helping to sustain so many different families and children, yet I didn't know how to connect that back. So for years, it was very frustrating, and Feed really came out of that frustration, because at the same time, I was considering myself going into design in the fashion industry. And I thought, gosh, maybe there's a way to combine these two loves, you know, of design, of entrepreneurship, with a way to give back. But Feed is not a business first and foremost. To me, first and foremost, Feed is a conduit to give back, and a way for consumers and individuals to really give back and make a very, you know, meaningful impact in the fight to end world hunger.
Lauren, what were some of the initial challenges that you had setting up the business with this difference? You know, going to people and saying, I want to do this, but I want to give back.
Good question. It wasn't that hard. I think when you are young and you don't know the rules, it's easier to break them. So I initially had a bag, and I built in a very large donation. And the first bag was a Feed One bag. And for every bag sold to this date, we feed one child in school for 1 year. So each product we make has a number on it. So that's a Feed model. It's very tangible, again, and hopefully very meaningful for consumers in that way. So it's not a percentage of profits or proceeds where you don't quite understand what that means or where that goes to. So started selling the first bag, and I actually forgot to sort of build in, you know, a shipping margin and all that sort of stuff. So you, as a small business, have evolved and grown, and we're now sustainable and functioning, but also maintain the fact that we are extremely charitable. And to me, again, it is, you know, a constant battle, I would say, to that double bottom line, because we do, of course, want to grow and scale our business and thus be able to scale our impact. But at the same time, I want consumers to know when they're making a purchase from Feed that a substantial amount of that money is truly going to the meals. So it's not cents on the dollar, it's more than that.
But is that hard though to balance, Lauren? Because as you say, you want to make a successful business, and of course, but because you're trying to balance the fact of giving a percentage back, is that a hard route to go?
It's not, I guess, because my intention with this was never to just, oh, I want to start an accessories company. My intention was to start a give back mechanism. So it truly is at the core of what we do. And the accessories and the business and, you know, all our other partnerships and activity are means to an end. So in that aspect, it's not hard. But it is, you know, we give away a substantial amount of our profits. And they're not even profits, they're kind of part of our COGS. Because it's literally that sort of embedded in what we do.
Now, you also started initiatives here in the United States, and quoting from you that there were 50 million poverty insecure people here. Could you just tell us how you became a partner with Target? How did that come about?
Sure. So basically, you know, started Feed again to support primarily the school feeding program. A lot of these pictures, I think, are from that. And a bit about that, so children in 62 of the poorest countries around the world literally go to school every day to get a school lunch. And as a result, they get an education. So it's this amazing life-changing program because not only are children getting that one nutritious meal a day, and it often is the only meal they get, but it really is what guarantees or incentivizes parents to send their children to school. And countries where girls' education just isn't valued, the World Food Program will essentially kind of bribe parents. So girls who go to school and have a good attendance record, they'll get sent home with extra food rations for their family. So it's this amazing life-changing program. So that's where I started Feed, but always knew hunger exists here in America and is a big issue. And 49 million Americans are food insecure, which means they rely pretty much on a regular basis on emergency food support. So food banks, SNAP program, you know, free reduced school lunches. And it's shocking. I mean, that's about 1 in 8 Americans. And that's a massive issue. And we are lucky compared to many, you know, developing countries around the world. We do have a safety net here. But at the same time, there are many people that are slipping through that. So Feed from the get-go, I wanted to support, but it took us a few years to get there. And last year we did a big partnership with Target, which was one of our kind of banner partners. And with that partnership alone, our goal was to raise 10 million meals. And we exceeded that and were able to raise over 14 million meals. And it was amazing exposure for Feed, and obviously the impact we were able to have in America was really significant.
Lauren, where does this motivation come from within you?
Ooh.
I mean, you've obviously grown up in a very famous family. Your grandfather, your uncle, 2 former presidents of the United States. Well, where was this coming from? Why did you want to do this?
I think I always, you know, everything looks cleaner in retrospect. I think at the time, I didn't know how all this would play out. And I always wanted my life to have meaning and to serve others. So I knew no matter what I did, that would be a big piece of it. And maybe I thought growing up that would be on the side. But I just feel so blessed and lucky that I somehow was able to merge, you know, this want and desire to make the world a better place and to help those in need with my love of design and entrepreneurship. So I am the lucky one in this situation.
But do you feel the pressure, or did you feel the pressure because of your surname, the expectation?
I didn't. My family never sort of said, you know, you're expected to do this, that, and the other. I do feel blessed that I had examples that were all about public service. So it was always something we talked about. And my mom, even growing up, started a charity to help homeless and abused children. We'd always, you know, volunteer at soup kitchens. So I was exposed to that, and I do think that was extremely helpful. And I love, you know, it was very transformational for me to be able to travel starting in college, even before with my family, but truly to travel in college and be able to see the realities that so many people live in. Because you can hear these statistics, and it's too big and too abstract and too far away to really understand and feel. But once you see that, and for me, truly it's about the sort of birth lottery notion that just because of where you're born into a certain life. And I've always felt so blessed. I've never wanted for food or for education or for anything. I was always told, even as a girl, as a woman, I can do anything. So to go and to be exposed to places around the world where that's just not the reality for children. And in fact, it's quite the opposite. Children are living day to day, not knowing where their next meal is coming from, and the most basic human needs aren't being met. And so after having that, very personal experience of traveling and interacting with these children and communities, you kind of can't come back from those experiences not wanting to do something.
A lot of people do, though.
I think everyone wants to, and I feel blessed again that I, was in college and figuring out my life's path. So it wasn't something that I had to tack on to like the kids I already had or the job I already had or the career path I was already on. I was really lucky, I think, to start fresh and really incorporate it into my life's path.
Lauren, when you travel, when you're on the ground, and we see you here behind us when you're meeting with people, what are some of the biggest challenges from country to country? Are the governments annoyed that you're there? Do they work with you?
So we work through giving partners on the ground, primarily the World Food Program. Here in America, it's Feeding America, which is the largest domestic hunger organization, UNICEF as well abroad. So we are not, we're on the front lines with them, but they're truly in the day-to-day, and they work in conjunction. So they won't work in countries where the government doesn't allow them in. So they're actually even in North Korea now, they're in Syria, they're in some of the craziest places around the world, because the government, rightly so, understands that their people, their basic needs aren't being met, and they come in to do that.
Oh, come in. No, come in, of course, come and sit down. Don't worry. Eugenie, it's wonderful to see you. Thank you so much. So we're just talking to Lauren Bush-Lauren about her fantastic initiative, which is Feed. And I know you know each other. And actually, ladies and gentlemen, we'd love to have your input. And please feel free, just interrupt Lauren and I if you have a point you want to share, or if there's anything that you want to ask. And at the end of our conversation, we are going to open it up to you. Tamara, you have a fantastic foundation. Oh, you have a question already? Okay. Go for it, Tamara.
I don't want to interrupt now.
No, go for it, of course. Yeah.
Obviously, being in the business, I'm fascinated did you think about where you were going to make your product and your bags before you started?
That's a very good question. And that was one of the many pieces I had to sort of put together. Initially, it was more just about getting a product made that was quality and the design I wanted, that again would give back in a substantial way. And about a year in, and after traveling, quite frankly, I saw all these amazing artisan groups around the world, practicing their traditional craft. So I wanted that to be incorporated into Feed. So not everything we make is artisan made, but about a third at least is. So even this bag I brought tonight for my show and tell is a new leather bag we're making, and it's made by artisans outside of the largest slum in Africa, in Kibera. But this is, it's beautiful, it's hand done, so much love and care goes into this bag. Sorry, holding up. And then on the back, I don't know if you can see, it has 200. So this bag, when sold, gives 200 meals. So we do love to also support artisans, and thus, obviously, by supporting livelihoods, we're helping to move them and their families out of hunger as well.
Do you find, and this is really for you too, Tamara, and for you, Lauren, do you find now that consumers are becoming more socially conscious?
No, you have to.
Definitely. But what is even more interesting is that when you go to employ somebody, that's when they're really conscious. They want to work for a company that also has a foundation or is motivated to do something.
That's true.
Do you find that, Lauren?
Well, on the hiring side, for sure. I think the millennials in general, whether it's in the career they're picking or in the bags they're buying or shoes they're buying, are conscious of the fact that, they want their consumer dollars to go towards companies that are authentically doing good. And I think they're becoming weary out there of companies that may be claiming it but maybe not doing it. So it's really savvy. There's a study that was done recently that said 93% of millennials
yes,
are
I was
more
just about
likely
to come up with that.
Okay,
but
sorry.
my one said here 87%.
Oh, different setting.
Edelman, a different, but it said that the millennials, they won't go to companies unless they have.
Yeah, or they're just more likely to, you know, if they have the choice between the two, and price and quality are the same, they'll much rather choose the one that is doing good for the world. So that's good.
Now, Sol Kerzner, I wanted to bring you in because not only did you build up an extraordinary empire yourself, but you've also been an incredible philanthropist all your life, Sol, and you've given back so much to your native country, South Africa. And I know that your late great friend, President Nelson Mandela, held you in such high regard, as we all do. Do you feel that philanthropy has changed? How have you seen it change? You have young ladies like Lauren.
It is a great example of change. This couldn't have happened 20 years ago. So I think this is just a great example of how conscious I think folks are.
But non-profits are obviously still so important, and
Yes.
you have your foundation as well, Lauren.
Yes, so we are both for-profit and nonprofit. Most of the meals we've raised are through our for-profit, through the sale of products and strategic partnerships. But we realized, you know, we just did last weekend a 10K race. I couldn't have done that without a foundation. And right now we're doing an initiative called Feed Supper, where instead of having sort of the gala model fundraising, we're hoping, and it's happening, people are hosting Feed Suppers in their homes and in restaurants and college campuses, and with that raising money. But it can be, you know, asking friends to give $1, $5, $100. And with that collectively over the month, ending on World Food Day, which is October 16th, ideally we'll be able to give 1 million meals. We're halfway there, which is exciting, but more suppers to be had. So we wanted another way to engage our feed community, you know, to have this collective impact and to really get behind the feed cause and own it in a way. And I think it's important for brands nowadays, period, but especially socially conscious brands, allowing consumers to really own the brand and take it on. And, you know, and suppers are answer to that, which has been really well received so far.
Is it hard, though, to get people's awareness? You're in the middle, as you said, of your Feed Initiative Supper. So what do you do? How do you get people excited about it?
For us, that's interesting. I mean, we don't have a crazy marketing. We have no marketing budget. Or advertising budget, and a lot of that we've relied on partners. But with Supper, and what we hoped and we are now seeing happening is it's very viral. So without having to force it, I think it's about creating activations and ways for people to engage that are very easy and kind of part of their daily lives anyway. And that was my feeling in starting Feed. I thought, gosh, people are going to buy bags, accessories anyway. Why not have it go to a good cause? And so with Supper, people are going to gather around the table and, you know, have suppers with their family and friends anyway. Why not allow them to participate and invite their friends to give back and sit down knowing, you know, you've given meals to those you may never meet.
And this is around the whole country, Lauren, you're doing?
Yeah, Country World. Next week we're doing, or this weekend, TED Global, that is in Rio, is hosting a big Feed Supper. So it's been fun to see not only individuals, but partners take it on and do it themselves as well.
How important are these initiatives for Feed? You have more coming up, I believe, around Thanksgiving.
Yeah, Thanksgiving's a big time. I mean, it's important. It's, you know, we're here to stay until hopefully we're not needed one day. But yeah, just to be the consumer answer for fighting hunger and to really engage people in a very meaningful way and really harness this millennial, of which I'm one, you know, want to give back in a way that's tangible and meaningful. I think young people are really looking, which is exciting, it's been proven, looking to businesses just as much as they look to nonprofits and government agencies to do good for the world. So I think another big change is, I think we used to think, okay, there's philanthropists over here and there's big nonprofits and government agencies, and the doing good for the world is kind of relegated to them. And now young people are really holding businesses accountable and saying, no, it's up to you guys too. And I think all businesses feel that even if it's having a CSR department, but I would argue to have sort of something that also is consumer facing, and Feed has been that solution for many different partners throughout the last 8 years.
Do we feel going forward that that is the way forward, that it'll be harder for businesses, and there are a lot of very successful businessmen and women in this room, to invest without some sort of social consciousness?
Well, I can just say,
Oh, thank you.
you know, my daughter Andy
Yes.
is very involved in this project, which is not feeding. It's in fact educating and really concentrating on getting young kids educated, and particularly into art. And I must say that you know, it's just great to see young people get involved. You know, you're a great example, and you know, we need more people to do that because it's just such a huge problem, particularly through Africa, all of Africa.
Tamara, yes, absolutely.
Actually, just thinking about your question, I think you won't see that now.
Okay.
Still talking to investors for my business, that's not a question that comes up. And it's always about kind of what's your EBITDA and what's your exit strategy, and you know, but as the millennials grow up and they make money and they invest, then I think that's when the change will come.
Tamara, you've had experience everyone knows here Tamara Mellon, who founded Jimmy Choo herself, and worked her way up literally from nothing. We met many years ago. You were in a room unpacking boxes, and built Jimmy Choo into an incredible company, and now your own brand. But you've had some challenges along the way in terms of investors, and how will you change that, and how do you want to inspire other young entrepreneurs that are looking to you, they're looking to Lauren, they're looking at you as role models? What advice would you give to them?
Well, whenever I speak to kids graduating from college and want to go into the fashion business, there's a couple of things I always say to them. You have a magic number and you never want to forget it. It's called 51%. And
we love that number.
And the other thing is get a really good finance director, because very creative people usually they're focused on the creative and they're not so much focused on the numbers. So you need a good finance director, but at the same time, don't let the accountant run your business. Okay. And those are sort of two things I always give.
Mm-hmm. And you were
wise words.
Yeah.
Ditto.
Even Saul's
Tomorrow,
agreed. Your Royal Highness Princess Eugenie, I hope you don't mind me bringing you in here. You missed your dad, by the way, because he was in our sizzle reel.
Was he?
Yes.
Oh, sorry.
No. But obviously you're here and you're working here at Paddle 8, which is an auction business, but you yourself are involved in so many different charitable initiatives. You're ambassador for your mother's charity, which is extraordinary, Children in Crisis. You do so much, and you're a millennial like Lauren. How are you finding it out there? Do you feel that young people like yourself are as interested as you and Lauren in these issues?
I think yeah, that to a certain extent, young people nowadays are finding it more interesting to get involved in charities. I do think that you need to come up with good ways, like you said, like make it interesting for young people to have dinner with their friends and make it part of donating to charity, because some people are either like, yeah, we understand it, or it's not even on our radar. We're just going to deal with college, school, adolescence, so it's all about making it interesting, I guess, for people like that. But then you have, I guess, people like us who have been brought up with families, and my mum, and who teach us how to want to be involved, and I've done that from a very young age, so I never want to stop doing it because of the fact that I've always just done it my whole life.
And do you find you can inspire others who haven't come from the kind of families that you have to follow suit?
Oh, me. Yes, I mean, I think for certain we've to date been able to give 84 million meals. We've sold over 700,000 bags, and those are bags not just to people like us, those are bags to people shopping in Target, Whole Foods, Nordstrom's, our website, so Shopbop. So I think like what you said is very true. I think it has to be interesting and accessible.
Yes.
You know, young people aren't dying to go to galas and can't write, you know, checks to sit at the right table and all, you know. It's going to be a new way, I think, of interacting with philanthropy that's already very much on the rise.
But you don't want to exclude the older generation.
No.
As well. So how do you get them involved and get them excited in what you're doing?
I mean, I think Feed is being a social business primarily, and yes, we have a foundation, but we're not looking to raise money in the traditional sense. I think it's different. I've chosen sort of a different path. But we would love young and old. My mom hosted a supper last week and raised a lot of meals. You know, I think hopefully supper is just one example of a way that can cross generation and engage young and old. Or she's not older. She'll kill me. Yeah.
Older. It's all relative in
young
this
and
room.
younger. Young and younger.
All young.
Sorry.
Well, slightly older.
Young at heart and physically young.
I wanted to bring. Yes, of course, Marisa.
Can I just ask? It's you hit the nail on the head when you started out saying it's just such a big problem.
Yes.
2 questions. Do you ever get discouraged because, you know, for every meal you provide, there are infinitely more that you can't provide? And the second question is, how do you decide where to go? Because you can provide a meal, but you provide then, you know, is there sort of commitment to then sustain that? And how do you do that versus go wide and try to solve a bigger problem in more countries?
Great questions. First on the discouragement question. No, I think it is easy to get discouraged when it is an issue like world hunger, which is probably the biggest humanitarian issue we face, next to water, as we heard Matt Damon talking about. So it can be discouraging. It can feel like a drop in the bucket. Yet at the same time, if you look at it to say like, oh, if I sell one of these bags today, 200 children would have gotten meals. So I try to kind of stay in that mindset. And where we choose to give our funds, often we do just give earmarking to the World Food Program School Feeding Program, and then they designate where the meals are needed most because, you know, countries, regions, they're constantly in flux and changing. And I've seen, you know, wonderful examples. For example, Rwanda, in 2009, we sold bags in Whole Foods Market. It was like a massive, our biggest partnership to date. And with that, we were able to feed all the school children in Rwanda for a year, just through that one partnership. And so I visited 2009. I actually went back last year with my team, and I discovered that the World Food Program was feeding much less children. And at first I was like, oh gosh, I'm horrified because we weren't able to give that same donation year after year, unfortunately. And you know, my initial thought was like, oh, they've cut this program and kids are going without. But the hopeful thing was that the government of Rwanda stepped up and said, you know, we're in a place now where we can actually take over these regions and do the school feeding ourselves. So that's the goal. So it's wonderful to see that although a lot of countries move back into needing more assistance, other countries at the same time are moving out of needing as much assistance. So it's constantly in flux.
Yes.
You touched only briefly about hunger among children in America.
Yeah.
We have so many programs, so many years to make an effort to feed children here. And yet, you mentioned it, but it's not commonly known. Can you elaborate, please, more about the hunger among children in America? That is one question. The other one, I was involved with feeding children again in the Philippines. And we discovered unless you bring some education to the parents, these hands-out are just going to go generation after generation after generation. It doesn't do any good. By educating the parents about the value of nutrition, about the importance of feeding their children, about looking after their children, we made progress. Otherwise, it would have just been a continuation of a welfare system.
Great questions and comments. So first on the issue in America, it is certainly a massive issue here. So of the 49 million Americans that they estimate are food insecure, 12 million of those are children. And it could even be more. And so unfortunately, so many children, you know, are growing up, again, waking up not knowing where their next meal is coming from. And we are lucky to have, you know, free and reduced school lunches and other programs that do help. But then there's the issue of nutrition as well, because those aren't always healthful and what children truly need to grow and develop properly. And actually the study recently Feeding America came out with said a third of households are choosing between healthcare and food. Over half are choosing between housing and food, and 2/3 are choosing between education and food. Actually, sorry, it's 2/3 are healthcare and food, and 1/3 is education and food. So basically, Americans are making massive trade-offs that are hugely affecting, their families and their children. And to the question about the Philippines and education, I have seen very much so, and when it's done properly, a lot of the food distributions are tied in with education. And what I found truly, it's, people want to sustain themselves. They don't have, no one in America or abroad wants to have to rely on these services. They want what's best for their children. At least the moms often do, even if the dad has, is off doing God knows what. But for the most part, just to be candid, no, it really are women who are very responsible, and if you do empower them with food, with whatever, you can pretty much guarantee that that's going to go to the children and go to where it's needed most. But 100% when it can be tied in with educational, with community building activities, it's really wonderful. And I think it's not about people going over to different countries and saying, here's what you need. I love when the program is really working with the locals and understanding their food cultures and what they're used to. I think those are the programs, the ones that are ground up are the ones that are most sustainable and really work the best.
Lauren, you've said, and I quote from you, true success for FEED would be the day we close our doors because world hunger is no more. How far away are we realistically from that day?
I won't be closing this year or next.
Sadly.
Sadly. But actually, it is a hopeful story. So in setting the Millennium Development Goals, the goal was to halve hunger by 2015. And although we're not quite there, we're actually made more progress than I think most people realize. So in the last decade, of the 842 million people that are hungry around the world, that used to be 942. So we've eliminated 100, although population has grown and all these crazy things are happening around the world, 100 million people less are going hungry. So it is moving in the right direction, and that's very hopeful. And children dying of preventable causes, mainly hunger, that number's also gone significantly down.
And just finally, Lauren, because I'm so sorry we have to end the conversation soon, but what is the future for FEED? What is your future? And also, would you ever be tempted to go into politics?
I love what I'm doing now, so probably not. No, I think the future for FEED is growing as a brand, growing our business, and thus being able to grow our impact. So even recently, as of last week, we launched a partnership with West Elm, where we're doing plates and aprons and cutting boards, so things related to food. So I'm very excited to move beyond bags and beyond accessories, which we've done in various ways, but into becoming even more of a lifestyle brand. Because truly the goal is for everyone to be able to engage with FEED, whether it's through a supper, whether it's as a consumer, and with that be able to give back in a significant way. Because part of beyond the money given, I think it really is changing this mindset that hunger is this insolvable issue, and allowing individuals to feel empowered that we can make a difference, because we can and we need to.
Well, Lauren, I think that the audience will agree with me that you've empowered all of us this evening.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for being with us. And on that note, I'd like to introduce you to another very inspiring woman, Pamela Thomas-Graham. If you could please join us, our host for tonight's event. Pamela Thomas-Graham is the Chief Marketing and Talent Officer, Head of Private Banking and Wealth Management Markets at Credit Suisse AG, and a member of the Executive Boards of Credit Suisse Group AG. Please welcome, ladies and gentlemen, Your Royal Highness, Pamela Thomas-Graham.
Well, thank you. Thank you to all of you. It's really great for me on a personal note to see the logo for CNBC and for Credit Suisse together, because on a personal journey, I feel like I've come full circle now. So It's like old home week. It's great to see what a wonderful steward of the business Mark has been, and it's great to see some other friends from the past. And I still watch, and I'm very proud of all that you guys are doing. And on the Credit Suisse side, it's really wonderful to have gotten to know Tanya and to be able to be a supporter of all the wonderful work that you're doing. And so I want to thank everyone for being here this evening, and particularly our guest of honor, Lauren, who is a true inspiration, I think, to all of us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. And to Mara and to Saul and to Princess Eugenie and so many who told their stories and made so many comments. I guess what I was struck by is first of all, how each of us makes a choice about how we will spend our time and our resources, and how it reminds me again that, to whom many are given, much is expected in return. And I'm really happy to see the example you've set, Lauren, and so many others. Sometimes we get kind of beaten down, and it's really nice to end a hectic Monday on a very hopeful and an inspiring note about how one person and one idea can make such a huge difference in people's lives. And I know we're not all women in this crowd, but I think it's also worth noting Credit Suisse has been particularly interested in women leaders of all types. We just released a study last week that looked at the impact of corporate organizations that have women on their corporate boards and in their senior management. And it is, in fact, the case that companies that have more women in key leadership roles tend to do better economically, and I would think probably socially as well. So it's good to have some data to back that up. And it's good to have some live examples in the room to prove that out. So the power of an individual, but frankly also the power of a group. I think you've really also underscored for all of us the power of an idea and an individual when it spreads to many is really the way that we make change in the world. And so I hope out of this evening will come some new connections and some renewed friendships and, renewed commitment for each of us in our own way to make a difference in the world. So thanks all of you for being here. Thank you, Tanya, for being the dynamo that you are. And I think with that, we have some food and some drink and some more time to mingle and share our stories and ideas. So thanks again to all of you for being here, and have a terrific evening. Thanks.
Just a bit of housekeeping. We have some wonderful people outside that are going to push us up in some lifts to go up to a library where some food and drink will be waiting for us.
You were my first visitor.
Thank you, honey. I really